The night the river claimed the infant, the sky itself mourned. Clouds gathered thick and heavy, trembling with thunder as though echoing the pain of one woman's final breath. Her name was Nkemdulu, the last true wife of Obachima IX, rightful king of Iziania Kingdom, until treachery poisoned the palace walls. Nkemdulu stumbled through the forest, her feet bare, her wrapper torn, clutching her baby to her chest. The child, just 11 months old, soft-skinned, bright-eyed, and unaware of the wickedness of men, cooed weakly as raindrops kissed her cheeks. Behind them, she could still hear the horns of the palace guards. Her husband's brother, Odokwu, the ambitious serpent who wanted the throne, had murdered her husband. When Nkemdulu fled with her daughter, she knew she would be next. Odokwu wanted no surviving heir. If both mother and child died, the throne would fall easily into his hands. Nkemdulu reached the riverbank at last, the sacred Udene River, where legends whispered that the goddess Mirioma watched over abandoned souls. Her strength was failing. Lightning split the sky. She fell to her knees, her baby still pressed to her chest. Mirioma, mother of the deep, please. Her voice trembled like a reed in the storm. If ever you have pitied the helpless, pity my child. She laid the infant carefully on a bed of glowing river moss. The waters shimmered in an unnatural light, as though listening. Nkemdulu lifted her tear-soaked face toward the black sky. Take her before the darkness of men can reach her. Protect her from the evil hunting us. Let her grow into someone the world cannot break. Thunder rumbled in answer, and then, as though the last thread of life snapped inside her, Nkemdulu slumped forward, lifeless. For a moment, there was silence. Then the river stirred. Slowly, elegantly. A figure rose from the water. She was tall, regal, her skin glimmering like polished obsidian, her hair cascading in waves of pure silver. Her eyes were deep as forgotten oceans. Mirioma, goddess of the water realm. She walked upon the surface of the river until she reached the crying infant. She knelt, cradled the child, and whispered, You shall be called Amaris, daughter of water and light, and the blood of kings. The river swallowed both goddess and child in a swirl of shimmering blue, leaving behind the silent body of Nkemdulu and the echo of a destiny that had only just begun. 21 years passed. The girl who was once a helpless infant grew into a breathtaking young woman. Her beauty was the kind that unsettled kingdoms, skin with the sheen of river pearls, eyes holding storms and secrets, and hair that flowed like a waterfall at dusk. She had lived between two worlds all her life. In the marine realm, she danced with water spirits, learned the songs of the deep, and spoke the language of tides. In the human world, she wandered the forests, rivers, and hills, curious about people yet wary of their cruelty. Mirioma always warned her, humans carry shadows in their hearts. Trust them only with half your soul. But Amaris was different. She longed for connection, for warmth, for love. Things the water spirits could never understand. One dawn, while she sat by Udene River, singing a melody she learned from a sea nymph, a rustle came from the bushes. A young man stepped out, tall, handsome, clothed in deep blue royal agbada embroidered with gold, decorations seen only on the elite. His name was Prince Obina, heir to the throne of Eziana. He froze when he saw her. Amaris continued singing, unaware of his presence, until she heard a sharp inhale behind her. She turned, and their eyes met. It was as though the earth paused. He stared at her like one who had discovered something sacred. You, who are you? He whispered. Amaris smiled faintly. Her voice carried the softness of ripples on water. No one important. But Obina shook his head. Anyone who sings like that cannot be ordinary. They spoke for hours. He told her about the palace, the kingdom, his duties, his dreams. She told him only a little, carefully chosen words, never the whole truth. Claiming to hail from neighboring village, Obina returned the next day, and the next, until every sunrise found him by the riverside, waiting. On their second week of meeting, unable to restrain his excitement, he said, Come with me to the palace. My father must meet you. Amorous hesitated. The marine spirits had warned her of palaces, of men in power. Yet something in her heart, something warm, pushed her forward. "All right," she whispered. The palace was grand, adorned with marble, bronze statues, and royal guards in crimson wrappers. When the king entered, Amaris felt the air tighten. He was older, fierce-eyed, and carried a dark aura. He froze when he saw her. His eyes widened, not in admiration, but in recognition. Though she did not know him, he knew exactly who she was, or so he thought. He hid his fear with a smile. "My son," he said calmly, "leave me with her. I want to welcome our guest personally." When Obina left, the king approached her slowly. "What did you say your name is again?" "Amaris." "And where are you from, my dear?" "A neighboring village," she lied smoothly. "Duruoha." The king studied her face intently, as though searching for ghosts in her eyes. Then he smiled, dangerously. "You are extraordinary." He motioned to a servant. "Bring her gifts. Gold, silk, perfumes. Everything befitting a queen." Amaris blinked. "A queen?" "Yes," he said softly. "You deserve a king, not a prince." Her heart skipped. Something felt wrong, terribly wrong, but she did not yet know the truth. Not until that night, when the waters glowed and Mirioma rose before her with fury in her eyes. "My daughter, that man, the king, is the murderer of your parents." Amaris felt the world darken. Mirioma continued, "This is your chance. Kill him. Kill his son. Take the throne that was stolen from your bloodline. The kingdom belongs to you." Amaris collapsed into the sand, trembling. Obina, the man she loved, the man who looked at her like she was the sun. She wept, between love and vengeance, between the ocean and the land. Her heart was split in two, and destiny waited for her choice. For 3 days the palace hummed with sudden, feverish life. Couriers arrived from distant towns bearing silks and rare spices. Musicians tuned zithers and drums. Cooks practiced sauces they had never before dared serve in the royal kitchen. The king had declared a private celebration to honor the unexpected guest. And the rumor that Amaris might accept royal favor spread like wildfire through the courtyards. Where the rumor landed, jealousy sprouted thorns. Amaris moved as if through a dream, gold cloth wrapped around her like sunlight. Servants smoothed her hair with oils that smelled of sandalwood and rain. Every gift the king sent was designed to dazzle. Gilded earrings heavy enough to feel like small crowns. A robe woven from threads that glimmered like river moon. A bowl carved from the tusk of some faraway beast. Obina watched as his father lavished her with things, his expression a complicated map of wonder and discomfort. "Accept nothing you do not want," Mirioma warned her in the low language of tides that only Amaris could hear. Her words came as a whisper in the water bowls and a sigh in the palace fountains. "Gifts are chains when they bind your will." Amaris held the necklace the king had given her that afternoon. A slender strand of pearls threaded with a single blue stone, like a drop of the river's heart. It warm against her skin, and for a moment she was only a young woman sitting by the water, not a child of prophecy. Obina drew near, and without thinking took her hand. "You deserve all of it," he said softly. His fingers trembled. "The palace is not the same since you came." Amaris looked at him, at the curve of his jaw, the worry crease at his temple, the sincerity in his eyes, and something inside her loosened. He had the easy goodness of those who had never had to choose between blood and ambition. Though her heart still burns with the duty of vengeance, the unexpected love shown to her by the prince, the king, and the royal household has awakened a conflict within her. Their affection feels like a long-lost piece of her soul, making her question the very path she swore to walk. When a feud lives in a palace, it moves like a shadow, slipping under doors, finding ears, making laughter brittle. Within days of Amaris's arrival, the quiet competition between father and son became a thing no servant pretended not to notice. It did not begin with swords or soldiers. It began with small courtesies that grew teeth. The king, who had always ruled with the slow implacability of a rusted gate, discovered in Amaris a new taste for possession. He moved like a man testing the value of a jewel, patient, measured, already calculating how her presence could be made useful. The prince, impatient and humane to his bones, loved with an awkwardness that had the innocence of a child offering his best toy. Between them, the palace became an arena. They argued in the morning council as if the matter of love were a grievance to be settled by policy. The king's voice was level, each syllable a stone that rolled over the court's heads. "Obina," he said once during a discussion of grain stores, "you have been distracted. Perform your duties as heir and leave the affairs of the heart to me." Obina's reply was a blade slipped into silk. "Father, it is not distraction when duty is the same as mercy. If you choose to entangle someone with promises, remember that promises can become chains." Those words ricocheted. The king's jaw tightened. A cold flash passed through his eyes. No one who had watched them together was surprised when, after council, the king sent for Amaris to dine privately. His smile for her was refined, like wine poured into crystal, flattering, slow, designed to be savored. "Tell me of the places you have known," he said, choosing topics like a man who arranges trophies. He spoke of land boundaries and alliances, of securing the line of succession, and wrapped his proposals in compliments. When he offered a necklace, gold threaded with moonstones, he called it the chain that will bind the house together. Amaris accepted the gift without letting her face betray the tremor beneath. She had learned to take things and weigh them silently. When the king's hand lingered an inch too long in the air, Obina's shadow filled the doorway. "You do not need to insist," Obina said to his father later, voice soft but ready to snap. "Amaris is not a prize to be shown." The king's laugh was without warmth. "And you are too young to understand how matters of state require adjustments." That evening, the prince tried another way. He led Amaris through the palace's lesser-known paths to a balcony that overlooked the river plain. Lanterns below trembled like captive stars. He spoke without pretense, telling stories of the fields he had ridden over as a boy, of a time when the future seemed not a map of obligations, but a blank field. "You must know why I brought you here," Obina said. "I do not want what my father wants. I only want you." He held out a small wooden flute, carved by his own hand, plain, imperfect, and honest. It was a gift that could not be measured in gold. Amaris pressed it to her lips, and the sound that came was a thread connecting two fragile souls. Across the hall, the king took a different tack. Where Obina offered truth, the king offered possibility. Land secured, a dowry greater than any neighboring house could muster, a place for Amaris that would be both throne and shelter. He sent ministers to promise retirements for the men who served Obina, offered favors to nobles who had influence over the prince's friends. Each favor was a stitch in a net. As ambushes of courtesy sharpened, words turned bitter. In private corridors, the father accused the son of foolishness. The son accused the father of selfishness. In front of Amaris, they became masters of decorum. But when the doors closed, their civility thinned. "You are reckless to think love is enough," the king said to Obina once in the privacy of a study lined with maps. "You would throw away a dynasty for romance? Tell me, what would happen if your softness leads to the weakening of the realm?" Obina's answer was a spit more tender than rebellion. "And what would happen if your hunger for legacy consumes the very people who make your legacy humane?" The king's face tightened. He called Obina pet names in front of courtiers and spoke sharp orders that made the prince look like a boy who had just been scolded. It did not stop the prince from finding Amaris in the green of the palace gardens the following day and bringing her a basket of freshly harvested figs, their smell like summer and youth. Amaris watched both men as a woman watching weather. She learned to read little signs, the hardening of the jaw, the small tremor in a hand, the way a gift was placed on a lap. Each motion told of what the heart would sacrifice. The king offered status. The prince offered himself. The king's offers were loud, gilded, and backed by advisors who bent like reeds in a storm. The prince's were quieter, threaded with the sort of honesty that rarely sways a throne. And then the court began to pick sides. Courtiers who wanted to wring favor from the king's hunger made jokes about the king's new taste. Young officers who admired Obina's youth called to him over cups of palm wine, Some ladies attempted to befriend Amaris, measuring her like a rival. The palace air shivered with gossip that turned polite smiles into thin blades. Amaris did not yet speak of the truth at the center of her chest. She kept the water in her secret, and it was a secret that made every flattery and every indignity more dangerous. She accepted the prince's honesty as a comfort, yet when the king pressed her palm and sealed a bargain with perfumed words, she felt the old pull of memory, the ache of being a child with no protector, the whisper that blood and right might be reclaimed. One night, in the hush between the feast and the next day's councils, Obina cornered his father in an antechamber, and the words between them were sharper than any public quarrel. "If you hurt her," Obina spat, "you hurt what is best in this house. If you think I will be lectured by my son," the king said coldly, "you are mistaken." The rivalry between father and son no longer flowed beneath the palace like an underground stream. It surged openly now, breaking through conversation, crackling in council halls, poisoning the very air. Servants walked on flattened feet, whispering behind pillars. Nobles avoided eye contact lest they be drawn into choosing a side. Even the queen, usually serene as a sculpted ancestor, had begun to fray at the edges. Lines gathered at her eyes. She watched her husband and her son move around each other like two leopards trapped in a narrowing circle. One evening she came to Amaris's chamber without attendants. She shut the door behind her as though fleeing from a fire. "My daughter," she whispered, voice trembling, "I beg you, leave this palace. Your presence is tearing my home apart." Amaris rose from her seat, startled. "My queen, I did not wish for this." "I know." The queen sank onto a stool, pressing a hand to her forehead. "But the king's obsession and the prince's devotion, they are like two storms colliding. Every moment you stay here, their bitterness deepens." Her eyes glistened. "I fear for my son, and I fear for what my husband might become." Amaris knelt before her, touched by the woman's sincerity. Yet before she could speak, a chill breeze swept through the room. The queen shivered and looked around uneasily. "Leave," she whispered again, clutching Amaris's hands, "before something terrible happens." That night, the river goddess Mirioma rose from Amaris's water bowl in a swirl of moonlit mist. Her tone was unyielding. "Do not run," Mirioma said. "Revenge sleeps in this palace. It is time to wake it." Amaris backed away, shaken. "But I do not know if revenge is still what I want." "Your hesitation insults the bones of your parents." The goddess's eyes glowed like deep-water fire. "If your hand trembles, make it firm. If your heart wavers, make it stone. Whatever you choose, choose swiftly. Choose directly." Before Amaris could answer, another presence rippled at the doorway. It was Ola, the water spirit who often took the form of a young woman with skin like polished river pebbles and eyes that shifted from blue to green with mood. She slipped into the room with a grin that was too serene to be comforting. "Sister," Ola said, leaning closer, "if your heart softens, let mine be the blade. I can avenge you. I can avenge them all. Just give the word." Amaris felt her breath snag. "No, Ola, I must not. I need time." "You are thinking like a human," Ola teased, though her tone held a darker edge. "Humans hesitate. Humans cry. But we drown what tries to drown us." "Ola," Mirioma warned sharply, "do not meddle beyond your call." But Ola only bowed with mocking sweetness and faded into the shadows of the room, leaving Amaris unsettled. The palace fell into deeper tension the next day. The king had been expected at a dawn council meeting, but he did not arrive. At first it was brushed off as fatigue, then concern, then unease. By midday, panic moved like a hissing snake through the halls. The king had vanished. His guards had not seen him leave. His bedroom was undisturbed. His ceremonial ring still rested on his dresser. The doors had been locked from the inside. Whispers swelled into accusations, and all eyes turned sharply, dangerously, to Prince Obina. "You argued with him last night," one minister said. "You were seen leaving his chambers late," another whispered. "You stand to gain the throne," said a third under his breath. "I did nothing." Obina's voice cracked through the council room. His face was drained of color, horror carved into every line. I would never harm my father. I swear it upon my life. But suspicion clung to him like smoke. When Amaris found him pacing his chambers, he looked at her as though grasping for air. You believe me, don't you? He pleaded. Tell me you do. Amaris's heart twisted. I want to. Because she did. She had seen truth in him again and again. But the palace murmurs had woven into her thoughts, and doubt slithered into the cracks of her mind. That night she slipped out to the riverbank, calling for Ola. The water parted and Ola emerged, expression serene. You seek me? She said with a smile. Amaris stepped forward, voice trembling. Ola, did you do something? Did you harm the king? Ola's smile faltered for the first time. Her eyes widened in surprise and something like disappointment. Sister, you think me capable of striking without your command? You offered, Amaris whispered. Offering is not acting, Ola replied coolly. I did nothing, I swear on the river's root. Her words felt true, but Ola was a creature whose truth could twist in currents Amaris could not always follow. Still, something else troubled her. Do you know where he is? She pressed. Ola's gaze dropped, the river behind her rippling. No. Silence stretched like a taut rope. Back in the palace, the queen wept quietly into her shawl, terrified for her husband, terrified for her son. Ministers scrambled, guards scoured the grounds. Obina pleaded with the council, and Amaris. Amaris stood at the threshold between truth and deception, her heart pounding with questions that had no answers. Had the king fled? Had someone silenced him? Had river or man taken him? And why did the air feel charged with an invisible storm? Ola watched Amaris leave the riverbank, her expression unreadable. Mirioma watched from the depths, her silence more frightening than her anger. And in the palace, in a locked chamber, Obina sat alone, feeling the walls close in on him as the shadows of suspicion grew thick. Amaris had never felt so lost. The king was gone. The prince was accused. Ola had secrets. The queen was unraveling. And somewhere in the heart of the growing storm, a truth waited, one that would shatter everything she thought she knew. The river had taken something, or someone had taken the river's place. The disappearance of the king had thrown the palace into trembling disorder. But by the third day, the disorder hardened into suspicion, razor-edged, cold, and ready to cut. The council convened with gray faces and quivering hands. In the high chamber, they called Prince Obina forward, though now they barely addressed him as Prince. A council elder cleared his throat, voice brittle. Until his majesty is found, he declared, you cannot ascend the throne. Another elder leaned forward, eyes narrowed. The heir cannot inherit when the king is missing under circumstances that implicate him. Until truth is found, your claim is suspended. Obina stood still, the royal blue sash heavy on his shoulders as though it were strangling him. I did not harm my father, he said again, voice breaking. I swear. Swears do not resurrect kings, another counselor snapped. Find him, or the throne remains empty. Their verdict spread through the palace in minutes, and as it spread, Amaris felt the walls closing in on her like a tightening net. She sought out Mirioma in desperation. At the river's edge, she called into the rippling water until the goddess rose, radiant and severe. Tell me the truth, Amaris whispered. Did you take him? Did you punish him for what he did to my parents? Mirioma's eyes held deep storm. I take nothing you did not command, she answered, and you gave no command. So you had no hand in it? None. I do not act in secret. I am the river, not a thief in the dark. Her answer chilled Amaris more than if she'd confessed. It meant the truth lay elsewhere, somewhere terrifying. When Amaris returned to the palace, she found the queen watching her with eyes sharpened by grief and suspicion. The queen's voice trembled as she approached her. Ever since you stepped through these gates, she whispered, peace has fled from my home. My husband vanished. My son is accused. Misfortune trails you as though you summon it. Amaris shook her head, heart pounding. My queen, Who are you really? The queen demanded. What blood runs in your veins? What secrets do you hide? Fear rippled through Amorous like cold current. The queen's gaze was no longer maternal. It was hunting. That night, under a sky bruised with storm clouds, another calamity struck. The prince vanished. His bed was empty. His sword was found lying on the balcony floor. No guards had seen him leave. No servant had heard a struggle. It was as though he had dissolved into air, just like his father. The queen screamed for the palace to be locked down. Her grief drove her to fury. "Search every chamber," she ordered, "every garden, every stable, and bring me Amaris, now!" Servants scattered like frightened birds. But Amaris, hearing her name shouted with venom, fled through the servants' corridors and slipped out into the night. She ran barefoot across stone, heart thundering, breath sharp. She ran because the queen now believed she was the spider at the center of every misfortune. She ran because she wasn't sure she could prove otherwise. She ran because if the palace seized her, the truth would drown with her. Within hours, scrolls were posted at the palace gates. Wanted, the king, the prince, the stranger girl called Amaris. All three missing. All three shadowed in mystery. The kingdom buzzed like a disturbed hive. Amaris reached the riverbank at dawn. Mist curled over the water like ghost hands. She fell to her knees, exhausted. "Please," she whispered, "river, goddess, ancestors, someone speak to me. Tell me what is happening." There was no ripple, no voice, no omen. For the first time since she was an infant, the river was silent to her. Her breath cracked. Her hands trembled. "Did I bring this?" she cried softly. "Did my presence unravel their world? Am I cursed, or hunted, or meant for something I don't understand?" Only the wind answered, cold and indifferent. She curled forward, forehead touching the wet earth. Tears fell into the river, but gave back no reflection. Only blurred distortions. Footsteps, shouts, metal. Amaris turned too late. Palace guards broke through the river reeds, spears raised. "There! The girl! Seize her before she escapes into the water." She tried to run, instinct, desperation. But hands grabbed her arms, binding them behind her. A rope tightened around her wrists. Another guard forced her to her knees. "You will answer for the prince's disappearance," one guard spat. "For the king's vanishing," another added. "For the chaos you have brought," said a third. Amaris shut her eyes as the river watched, silent, distant, withholding. Far beneath the waves, Ola swam furiously toward the throne chamber of the Queen of the Coast. She burst into the hall, dripping water in panic. "My queen!" she gasped. "Amaris is in danger. The humans have seized her. You must help!" The Queen of the Coast, regal, ancient, fierce as the tide, rose from her coral throne. Her hair flowed like ink. Her voice thrummed with power. "Help!" she echoed. "Why should the river intervene in what destiny has woven?" "She is one of us!" Ola cried. "She is innocent. Innocent!" The queen's eyes flashed like lightning in deep water. She walked into the affairs of mortals with her heart unguarded. She allowed herself to be pulled by love, by confusion, by indecision. "But listen well, child," the queen's voice quieted, becoming cold and weighty. "Amaris invited this path upon herself. She refused clarity. She rejected the vengeance that belonged to her blood. She ignored the warnings of river and goddess alike." Ola trembled. "So you will do nothing?" "I will watch," the queen said. "But her fate, her destiny, will choose its own tide. Only she can decide whether she sinks or rises." Ola bowed, defeated, tears merging with seawater. Above on land, Amaris was dragged toward the palace. A girl accused, a princess unrecognized, a tide unclaimed. And the river, her oldest protector, remained silent, as though waiting to see whether she would drown or become the storm she was born to be.